Hello, OOSKAnews users. Today we're joined by Mark Fletcher of the global construction company Arup. We're meeting in Glasgow, Scotland today and have a lot to talk about that will be of interest to OOSKAnews listeners and readers. But perhaps, Mark, we could ask you to take a moment to describe Arup for those who may be less familiar with the company.
So Arup, it's a large multidisciplinary consultancy, over 15,000 staff, turnover about 1.6 billion, something of that order, located all around the world. So very much global, modelled along the John Lewis partnership. I see it very much as a collective, everybody working together, or a cooperative is a nice way of thinking of how we operate, what we're about. With very much a strong social purpose, a drive to shape a better world. That's very much what we're about, with UN 2030 Sustainable Development Goals very much at the forefront of all of what we do.
And many of our readers are non-UK and may not pick up your reference to a John Lewis structure.
Yes.
That essentially means that the owners of the company are its employees.
It's effectively owned by the employees. So that means we work together for the things that we think are really important in the world.
And does that, do you think, underlie a sense of social responsibility in areas sensitive, in areas like water and climate?
Very much, and recognising the importance of, at a time when we have a changing climate and the bulk of all the impacts of that climate change are felt through the water cycle. So we very much follow that into what can we do about that, and how that starts to develop the whole water resilience agenda around the world.
And we met last, I believe, at the UN Climate Change COP conference 2 years ago in Morocco, and there was a feeling that the nexus between water and climate, particularly climate adaptation, was having a good week. It was rising on the COP agenda. Progress was felt. Do you feel in the last 2 years that progress in international recognition of the importance of water, climate adaptation is continuing? Some would say perhaps it slipped a bit.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, having been involved from COP20 in Peru, from in Lima, where we were just trying to get water on the agenda, to hosting the largest event at COP21 in Paris, where water was on the agenda, to us then having a water day at the COP in Marrakesh and subsequently at Bonn, and this year in Katowice. I think it's there. I think there's a recognition that whilst all the efforts have gone into mitigation, we're now looking at scenarios of 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3 degrees or more. And as we do that, it's clear that adaptation's got a massive role to play, particularly across the water cycle, given that most of the impacts are felt through the water cycle.
And a phrase one hears repeated in terms of approaches to adaptation is smart cities. We at OOSKAnews reported an interesting paper co-produced by Arup last year. We'll provide another link to the report Cities Alive, Water for People, which described water as the lifeblood of cities. Do you feel that more cities around the world where Arup works are realising this, and are cities becoming smarter?
I think they are. I think we're seeing the emergence in the language that's used around blue, green and grey cities rather than our traditional infrastructure. I think having passed the point where more people live in cities than live in rural areas, and that's accelerating, we also see the rise of the megacity. So what's happening in Manila or Sao Paulo, or and we're trying to shine our light into those spaces to see what the future of urban water might be in a smart context.
Today, we're not in a mega city, but we are in Glasgow, Scotland, at a meeting of an initiative of the Scottish Government. It's known as the Scotland, the Hydro Nation, and specifically today's gathering is of stakeholders in the Scotland Hydro Nation Water Innovation Service, with the theme being innovation supporting the Hydro Nation strategy. OOSKAnews will provide a link to papers outcoming from today's event. Hydro Nation Water Innovation Service, we'll just say HINWIS because it's a little bit faster. But perhaps you can explain in your own words what the thinking and drive behind this initiative is, and Arup's taking the lead in the programme. It all sounds quite exciting.
It does, and I think what's really exciting is the bold step that the Scottish Government took to look at Scotland as a hydro nation, looking across the whole water cycle and connecting up the dots. And in connecting up those dots, part of what they're doing is looking across the whole supply chain of delivery, world-leading public service through Scottish Water and their associated organisations, and now start to look deeper into that supply chain, seeing how we can foster innovation through small and medium enterprises, and how we can improve the process that we go through to bring that value to market, to bring that value to the customers, to the people of Scotland, and then export that expertise overseas.
We do hear about challenges involved with linking innovators, SMEs, helping them to take innovations to market at scale. We heard some observations about that today. What will HINWIS do differently to shortcut that sometimes difficult process?
I think let's not pretend this isn't going to be a silver bullet. It's important that we listen to the issues that the SMEs have. We don't just look at from a technology perspective at innovation. We also look at behavioural issues, procurement issues. Where are the blind spots? How can we start to connect these SMEs with very innovative use of redundant assets at Scottish Water to create testing facilities, access to European investment through Interreg funding to help those SMEs get to market and develop their ideas in a much more streamlined and accelerated way that doesn't reduce the risk, or that aims to reduce the risk profile, doesn't enhance it. At the moment, it takes too long to get innovation to market into a too conservative sector, and what we're trying to do is challenge preconceived views and see whether we can do this better, do this more in a more innovative way, and something that benefits all parties in the process.
Arup's very much a global company. Is this Scottish Government approach really new? What's terribly new about this, or are there other exemplars? Is everybody doing this now?
So I think from addressing from a national perspective, this hydro nation across the water cycle, I think is very special. I think they've got industry-leading regulation from the Water Commissioner for Scotland and from SEPA, the Scottish Environment Protection Agency. I think other areas are very good at technology innovation, like Singapore or like Israel. I think this is looking at the wider picture across the water cycle, providing access to live network such that we can develop water treatment, wastewater treatment ideas, apply them. Scotland is it's got a legacy of innovation, creativity and innovation, unsurpassed I think around the world, and this is trying to help them realise that full potential in Scotland.
Well, you mentioned Singapore and Israel. Those are the geographies that spring to mind when people in the water community talk about innovation and punching above one's weight in water technology. Both interestingly small countries. Does Scotland have an advantage because of scale there, do you think?
I think possibly, and possibly an opportunity to look at different aspects, given they've got different climate and different challenges. Of course they have. And I think, what's really powerful, I think, is this alignment across the water cycle of the various bodies, this common perspective. Having found that common ground, then starting to exploit that for national and international benefit.
OOSKAnews will certainly continue to follow the activities of Scotland, the Hydro Nation. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mark Fletcher.
Thank you very much.